The battlefield was silent in the way that only battlefields can be silent, not empty of sound, but emptied of everything except the sounds that matter. Steel on steel, the specific percussion of boots on broken ground, the breathing of men who know they may be taking their last breath and have decided, consciously, to breathe anyway. At the center of it all stood a figure in blue and gold, sword raised, completely still. He had been still for exactly 1 second. The kind of second that contains more information than Demacia most people process in an hour. His eyes were moving across the field with the calm precision of Dilev, someone reading a map, cataloging, calculating, already 3 moves ahead of every enemy in his sightline. Then he moved, and everything in his path stopped moving permanently. His name was Garen, and across the whole of Valoran, in taverns and war councils and the hushed conversations of soldiers who had faced him and somehow survived, that name carried a prosecura, come below crew weight, that very few names ever achieve. Subscribe if you're new. A new League of Legends story drops every week. This one is about what it costs to be the thing everyone else measures themselves against. Demacia is not a nation that does things quietly. Its walls are white stone, and its banners are gold and blue, and its armies move through the world with the particular confidence of people who believe, completely and without irony, that they are on the right side of history. Other nations maintain armies. Demacia is its army, the military. Tradition runs so deep into the culture that the two things are no longer separable, like trying to remove the skeleton from a body and expecting the body to remain standing. The principle at the center of this tradition is simple enough to state and extraordinarily difficult: to live. Zero tolerance, no excuses, no retreat, no surrender. Not as a slogan printed on a banner, to be waved before battle and forgotten during it, but as an actual operating philosophy. The genuine internal architecture of every Demacian soldier, from the lowest foot soldier to the highest-ranking commander. This principle is not taught in classrooms. It is demonstrated. It is shown, repeatedly and under pressure, by leaders whose behavior makes the principle visible in real time, who embody it so completely that soldiers watching them understand, without being told, what it looks like to Vilsov cream, actually believe in something. Garen was the standard against which those leaders were measured. He came from a military family in the way that certain Demacian families do, not just with soldiers in the lineage, but with the entire identity of the household oriented around service, around the idea that the highest use of a life was to spend it protecting something larger than itself. He grew up understanding this before he could articulate it. It was in the structure of every day, in the expectations of every meal, in the way his family spoke about duty, the way other families spoke about weather, as a constant, as a given, as the background condition of all other experience. He was exceptional from the beginning, not in the showy, attention-seeking way that young soldiers sometimes mistake for genuine ability, but in the quiet, relentless way that reveals itself over time and pressure and difficulty. He trained longer than required. He asked questions that went beyond what the lesson demanded. When other young soldiers found the minimum acceptable performance and settled there, Garen was already past it, already working on the next level, already treating every achievement as the floor of the next challenge rather than the chambal ceiling of this one. His rise through the ranks was not slow, but it was also not reckless. He moved upward because, he was genuinely ready for each level before he arrived at it, which is a different thing from simply being ambitious enough to push for advancement. The Demacian military infrastructure, whatever its flaws, was good at recognizing this distinction. By the time he was leading units in the field, he had the specific authority that comes not from rank insignia but from demonstrated competence. The authority of someone whose soldiers trust him, not because they are required to, but because the evidence supports it. In the bloody corridor of conflict between Demacia and Noxus, thousands of great warriors were born and died on those contested fields. Campaigns that historians would later spend decades Idolizing were decided in single afternoons by the movement of men and the decisions of their courtiers, commanders. Garen fought in those campaigns. He moved through that landscape of controlled violence with the same focused precision he brought to everything. No wasted motion, no hesitation, no performance of courage as distinct from the actual thing. He became the symbol of something. Not just a good commander, not just a skilled warrior, something more specific and more consequential. The visible proof that Demacia's principles were not merely theoretical, that the .0 tolerance code was not a convenient ideology, invoked when it cost nothing and quietly, abandoned when it became expensive, that there was at least one person in the White City who lived those values completely and without reservation, under every condition, regardless of Safaiyat's personal cost. This made him beloved by some. It made him uncomfortable to others, the way that someone who actually lives their stated values makes people who only claim theirs feel the gap between Tuakaparouse and Shattered. The two. And then came the day on one of those Demacian and Noxian battlefields when he met Katarina. The witnesses who survived described it differently, the way witnesses always describe moments that exceed their frameworks for understanding. Some focused on the technical dimensions, the speed of it, the economy of movement on both sides, the way two people who had spent their entire lives learning the same grammar of violence recognized each other across a battlefield, the way musicians recognize each other across a room. Steel, finding steel in a poem, rhythm that was almost structured, almost composed, the sounds of their engagement forming. Something that the more poetically inclined survivors would later describe as a symphony, played by instruments that were trying to destroy each other. Others noticed something different. Garen, the unshakable, the standard-bearer, the embodiment of Demacian composure under any and all pressure, was breathing hard at the end of it. The first engagement in a career of engagements where he had emerged from violence, showing visible effort. Where the physical little minta reality of the fight had pushed past his ability to make it look easy. Some said it was simply the quality of the opponent. Katarina Ducateau was Noxus's deadliest blade, a woman whose methods were everything Demacia opposed and whose effectiveness was chorus impossible to argue with. It made sense that fighting her would be harder than fighting anyone else. It made sense that she would push him to a limit that no one else had reached. Others said the breathing had nothing to do with exertion. Those rumors gained credibility over time. Not because anyone could prove anything. Garen never confirmed or denied, never acknowledged the speculation, with so much as a change of a shukalishan expression, but because of a pattern that became increasingly difficult to explain on purely tactical grounds, the consistency with which he found himself in proximity to his Noxian counterpart, the number of times their paths crossed that exceeded any reasonable probability doxid of coincidence, the quality of attention he brought to each of those encounters, the particular focus that was different in character from how he faced any other opponent. Garen, embodiment of Demacian virtue, did not dignify these rumors with a response. He understood something that the people generating the rumors did not. They were looking at the situation from the outside, constructing stories that fit their frameworks for understanding human behavior, applying categories that made sense in normal life. They could not see what he saw. They could not know what it meant, from inside the specific world he inhabited, to find on a Shemaya battlefield someone who matched him completely, who spoke the same language of steel and discipline and absolute commitment, even in service of opposite ideals. A real warrior, Garen understood, lives for the moment of genuine contest, the moment when the person across the field is not merely an obstacle to be removed, but an actual equal, someone whose capabilities demand everything you have and reveal, in demanding it, exactly what you are. Most soldiers spend entire careers without finding that. Most commanders lead from a position of superiority that, while effective, never tests the actual limits of what they are capable of. Katarina tested the limits every time. She was everything Demacia opposed. the hidden blade, the assassination, the rejection of the honorable direct engagement that Demacian tradition considered the only legitimate form of violence. She worked in shadow, where he worked in light. She served an empire whose byleads philosophy was the mirror image of his own. The collision of their values was total, theoretical, absolute. And yet, the steel knew. In the moment of contact, in the pure information exchange of blade meeting, blade at the highest level of mutual competence, the ideology fell away. What remained was something simpler and more fundamental. Two people who had both committed completely to the same discipline from opposite directions, meeting at the point where that discipline reached its limit. He kept no record of their encounters. He made no note of how many times they had crossed paths, how many times the symphony of their engagement had played out across different fields, in different seasons. He was Demacian to his core. The record he kept was internal, private, the kind that has no entry in any official accounting. The rumors could say what they wanted. The people generating them were not wrong, exactly. They were just missing the language for what they were actually observing. Garen stood on another field, in another season, with another battle unfolding around him. His sword was up. His breathing was steady. Somewhere in the chaos, he knew, she was moving. He had not gone looking for her. He had simply not looked away. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. Every week, a new League of Legends lore, the ones, Biled, that do not fit neatly into hero or villain,